Something borrowed. New home. New place to roam. New off the top of the dome. We're back, baby. We've got Theresa Lola celebrating her new book in our new home. Don't know if I mentioned it. We've got a stunning audience. We've got vibes. We've got poems. We've got you. It's Something Borrowed. Season 2, Episode 2. May the force be with you, too.
Wonderful. So, my name is Harry Baker. I am a poet, and I'm going to start off with something old, and then we're going to bring our fabulous special guest on and go from here. And this something old is a poem I wrote about Margate. Someone was coming to film some footage in Margate, and they wanted to ask some local celebrities what their favorite things were about the area. And then all of the local celebrities were busy. And so I was sort of first reserve. And I didn't want to just sort of talk about my favorite cafes, even though I would happily do that for hours on end. I thought I would try and make a poem of trying to weave, I guess, a sort of tapestry of all of the different parts of Margate that I love. I've been here 7 years now. And as I started writing things, I started thinking of more and more, and then realized I couldn't possibly capture it all, but I could just try and get a snapshot. And one of the joys of Margate is some of these things have already gone out of business, but we remember them through poetry. And also, my friend Katie is an amazing graphic designer. So she has turned this into a lovely print. So I'm going to read this off a very large piece of product placement, which is a glorious print of this poster. And it simply goes like this. It is seeing the sea the second you step out of the station. It is smelling the seaweed as soon as you get within 50 feet of the turner. It is queuing up for the special from Pete's. It is dough balls from GB Pizza. It is Po' Boy being open for 2 hours at a time, once every leap year if the moon is full. And it is worth it. It is T.S. Eliot being an anagram of toilets. It is Tracy Emin having a seal named after her. It is playing crazy golf behind someone who has brought their own clubs. It is the council clearing away a Banksy, but not your actual rubbish. It is a drag queen called Janet District Council. It is Dreamland. It is a bed shop next to Dreamland, also called Dreamland. Rest in peace. It is going into Scott's for a screwdriver and coming out with a table. It is stopping for a coffee in Forts and Big Shot and Curve and Cliffs. It is the upstairs table in Xylo. It is the secret room in Little Swift. It is 2 post offices, 1.5 of which are about to close. It is Daisy's deep fried baby bells and frozen Kinder Buenos. It is the best tracky bottoms that I have ever owned. It is Shell Grotto. It is Christmas markets. It is marches for Palestine. It is people. It is people them. It is the Everyday Racism Book Club. It's community beach cleans. It is the Rise Up Clean Up murals. It is the Heckle sauna. It is a New Year's Day swim in the tidal pool. It is a birthday trip to the Crab Museum. It is pretty much a whole day out at International Food Centre. It is Margate Pride being the best day of the year. It is jumping off the harbour arm. It is fireworks on the beach. It is outdoor cinema at the bandstand. It is how I've not mentioned the sunsets yet. It is the Tom Thumb Theatre. It is the Bus Cafe. It is the Loop. It is that running club. It is that moment at the camp quiz. It is where else. It is we are here. It is brilliantly queer. It is where I plan to be for many years. Thank you so much. So could we give a glorious Margate welcome to our special guest? They have been on my list of people to try and get for the podcast for a long, long time. And thankfully, they have recently moved back to Kent and are therefore much more available than before. So we're going to get them on stage. They're going to do something old, and then we're going to have a chat and work through these. Please welcome to the stage one of my favorite poets, the absolutely fantastic, brilliant Theresa Lola.
Hello, how are you doing? Good, good. So excited to be here. Okay, thank you so much, Harry. So I tend to write a lot about just like anything, family, friends, random things, my glasses, because my favorite poems are just about anything. So one of my favorite poems is Ode to My Socks by Pablo Neruda. And he also writes about like tuna. Just, yeah. So for me, and everything is inspiration. And this particular poem, it's a few years old now. I wrote it about my friend and I. So after sixth form, well, during sixth form, we had own clothes day for the last year of sixth form. And we dressed up as Serena and Venus Williams. And I don't know what possessed this, but afterwards, like, we should start playing tennis. So we spent the summer, we spent the summer playing tennis before we went off to university, and we were terrible. We tried to get lessons, and that just didn't work out. But I thought, you know, we can make, I can still make this a useful experience by writing a poem about it and writing a good poem. So I'm still good at something. So this is Ball and Bounce. Two girls holding two rackets and two tennis balls strut down one long road towards Lady Wellfield's Park. The sun serves us the feast of spotlight we crave after a day of toiling. Air glides into the throat of the racket and doubt unclogs from our lungs. Today, we are no longer two girls trying to split Heather Watson's name between our teeth. We are no longer Serena and Venus Williams impersonators. Today, we hold the rackets like we hold our bodies, assured it is wide to swing against anything thrown at it, anything thrown at us. At Lady Wellfield's Park, an Oyster card peeks out of our pockets like a passport for a body always ready for flight. Two young girls holding rackets like loudspeakers ask to join us on the court. We say yes, without hesitation. Words bounce over the netted barrier between us. We share the first three letters of our postcode like a password to unlock a story within us. We envy the fluorescent yellow of the tennis ball. We dream of being obvious in our existence. A teenage girl walking past asks what the score is. And we shout love, which we now tennis experts know means 0. 10 minutes later, the same girl walks past, and to seem productive, we shout, the score is now 30, love. Love never exits this space between us. We bounce it between each other like a church singer throwing a note over a piano during a duet. Our hands forget to become sore. We will forever boast that is our superpower. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on. This is first time in this space. This is the first time we sort of had mic stands that come to the seats. It's all new. It's all very exciting. I'm very, very pleased to have you. In terms of something old, the first thing I want to ask you about is we both got to perform at the Royal Albert Hall in May. And I had Toby on a few months ago, and it looks a little bit like I'm just inviting people so I have an excuse to tell everyone I performed at the Royal Albert Hall. But it's worth mentioning twice. But you were on first, which
Yes.
I did not envy, and you were absolutely fantastic. But my question is, A, how did that feel to open the space and set the tone? And B, sort of how did you decide what to share in that space? Because my memory was you shared some things that were kind of newer rather than just sort of going for things that felt safe, perhaps.
Gosh, it was all new poems, but that was an amazing experience. And to share that with you, setting the tone, that was that was a weight to carry. But I had to look to the other poets and just the range that the range of emotions that the audience were probably going to go through throughout the night. And so selecting poems based on that. So poems that were quite heavy, poems that are also, funny, poems that were about universal experiences, poems that were personal. So I wanted to kind of give a sense of what the night was going to be while still staying true to myself. But I loved it because it was kind of like my return to slam days of just like doing everything from memory. Yeah. So it was all new poems. So I really enjoyed doing that. And I love that Lionheart, just who, directed it, just told us that we should only have poetry, no music, no accompaniment, that everyone should just kind of go back to their roots. So it was wonderful.
I thought Lionheart was brilliant in the lineup he curated, but also in giving everyone space and making sure that we sort of took the time to enjoy it and resetting between each performer. And there was such a mix and everyone was stunning and brilliant. But to be able to have something that was sort of heart-wrenching and then reset and then come back and have something else, I thought he did brilliantly.
Because that's what poetry is.
Yeah, exactly. much more recent, last night was your book launch
Oh yes,
for your
yes,
new
yes.
book. How was that?
I was saying to you that I think I've only just recovered just on my way here. But it was awesome. It was awesome. So I was just talking about music, but I performed the poems accompanied by an Afrobeat jazz band, all women, and it was just like it was incredible. It was just bringing the poems to life in a different way. I really enjoyed that.
Amazing. And the books are here and everyone should buy them, obviously. But what I found really interesting, and hear you talk at the start about how you love writing about all kinds of different things, it feels like it is a cohesive collection under one theme, rather than, I think a lot of my previous books have been every poem that I've written in the last couple of years that I've then sort of retroactively tried to link together in a way that isn't just I wrote this and I wrote this. And I think in my writing, naturally, there are threads that come through and feel relevant. But currently, it's the first time I'm writing a collection of poems that are all supposed to link together, all have that in mind beforehand. Can you talk a bit about the title or the theme of the book and whether that was something you had in mind from the start or that only came out once you had written some of the poems?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think maybe because I really enjoy reading fiction, and following a narrative thread, naturally my work tends to be like that. I think I want to write fiction, but I write poetry. So it's like, how can I still take the audience through that journey? So, and I love coming of age stories as well. And so the collection literally starts off at a naming ceremony, a baby being introduced into the world, and you follow me through my teenage years, me getting married, and all of those things. So with Ceremony for the Nameless, I initially had a completely different manuscript, which I probably only 15% of that survived. But I was thinking about oral storytelling, so the ways in which truths and wisdom and messages are passed down through generations and shared with each other. And I was looking up like Yoruba proverbs and reading those. And there was one particular proverb which translated to, "You do not name a child unless you know the condition of the home into which they are born." And that just like caught my attention. And years before, someone had asked me about name and, like, why don't you use your Yoruba name? And I hadn't thought much of it, but after seeing that proverb, I thought there's something there, and started, thinking about the significance of names in my culture, but not just my culture, but in the world, the ways in which we use names to understand ourselves, to contextualize things, people, places, buildings, relationships. And so I wrote a poem in response to that particular proverb at first. And then it just kind of expanded and just took on a whole life of its own.
I've been thinking a lot about names recently, partly because we've just had a baby. I'm thinking about, one, giving them a name, but also...
I would hope so.
I have talked quite publicly about not wanting to just announce my baby's name online to a bunch of strangers versus that feeling like an intimate thing. So I'm very happy to talk about him, and I'll do some poems about him, but thinking about what it means to introduce someone and how you have that space. And when we got married, we changed our surnames to make a new one that was sort of emerged, and that felt really important in terms of becoming this family unit. But it meant that I'd always been Harry Baker, and that went from being my actual name to my performance name. Okay. And so I feel like I still have that link to my family, and I love being a baker and I love part of that. But also it was the same time we moved to Margate, so it felt like here we then got to forge these new identities as well. And I think it feels like among my friendship group, at least, there are people who are having these conversations about whether they do just want to take their partner's name or whether they want to go double-barreled, because as a mathematician, that is problematic 3 generations down.
I thought I was the only one that thought about that.
Yeah.
Like, what happened?
Yeah. But I think, so yeah, I've been thinking about names a lot, and so if it's okay with you, I've got 2 short new poems on
I would love to
and
hear
then
them, yes.
I'm going to ask you to read some. So I've been writing a poem a day for the first 100 days of my son's life, and I went back through the early ones, and a lot of them are just complete nonsense. But it's really lovely to try and mark it somehow, or to go back through and to try and find. I found as a sort of daily exercise at the end of the day, thinking, what is it that I want to draw out from this? And I think There is so much in there every day that we can. But this is from day 7, and it's simply called, what's he called? Baby Bear, Sleepy Bee, Snufflemeister, Wriggle Guts, Milky Prince, Gorgeous Boy, Little Squidge, Peachy Bum, Petal, Chicken, Pickle, Plum, Carrot, Oh So Loved, Soft, Delicious, Precious One, Star. And this is towards the other end of the 100 days. This is on day 94, and it's dedicated to the woman in the cafe with the 3-year-old who said the phrase, "I love you so much, but you are a piece of work, mate." And I hadn't known him for long, but it seemed like she was on the money. You are a piece of work. You are a work of art. You are the art of new life. You are the life of the party. You are part of the team. You are teeming with potential. You are potentially the greatest baby there has ever been. You are a bean. You are a mini milky Michelin man. You are 90% frown. You are 100% worth the wait. You are the perfect weight and size. You are world-weary size. You are constantly surprised. You are reassuringly solid. You bring a sense of peace. You are a piece of work. And I love you so much, mate. Thank you so much. Would you read us something from the new book? And then I want to ask you some more about it.
Yes, I'll read. My middle name returns from work. My middle name returns from work. She gathers her hair, the field of ripe black crops, lips lined in 90s coffee brown. She strides silkier in heels than my first name does. She pays all the rent, lives at the confluence of income streams. She knows of harvests, her hands innately deaf. My middle name was known in this continent, dare I say beloved, years before I was born. The first of her kind was Theresa from Spain, a 4th century Christian aristocrat. I jest, remind my middle name that my first name translates to God has given me wealth. She too could have fended for us. My middle name shrugs and gowns away. In France, she's known as Theresa of Lixus, nicknamed Little Flower, a thing to be looked after. A friend's mother once said to me, "Saint Teresa, pray for us that our barns may be full." Her chuckle enveloped her body. My middle name knows her etymology is a row of Greek symbols. She poses as rock star, rubs shoulders with the artist formerly known as Prince. After removing her work shoes, I advise my middle name to take tomorrow off. I invite her and my first name to the dining room to sit, eat, and laugh like a family with no favorites. While we wait, I rub my first name's back, massage the nodes on her flat spine, her smile languishing by the minute. My middle name hesitates, then joins us. We try, but conversations falter. There has been too much distance. We no longer know what makes the other laugh. All right, the second is a bit more light-hearted. It isn't to do with names, but part of the collection is also like cultural heritage and just about like I guess moving here and experiences that felt like mirror. I felt like deja vu, just things, unexpected things that reminded me of home and my upbringing. And one was my mum was working in Woolwich like years ago, and going there and how so much of it reminded me of Lagos. And I wanted to bring that mirror experience into of how so this is Carousel of Oil Sheen. And I should say, like, for anyone here who's ever gotten their hair done there, like, it is quite rowdy. Like, just walking on the street, someone's just shouting at you, "Do you want to get your hair done? Do you want to get your hair done?" Like, it's quite intense, quite intense. And as someone who has natural hair, I'm like, I thought my hair was done, but I guess it's not. But I take no offense, have to make some money. All right, carousel of oil sheen. Fine girl, do you want to do your hair? The hairdresser asked when I entered the salon. The air was a carousel of oil sheen. This is the script of Lagos. What else is hair for? If not to shine, shine and shake like shekere and tambourine. The hairdresser said to me after I mapped out the elaborate hairstyle I wanted. When someone asked to jump the queue, she called, "Give me 5 minutes, please." She was a full-time scientist of time. People came in to buy bags, clothes, shoes, everything. She put a blob of blue magic on the back of her hand. Her eyes deftly measured it. Then she drew a line through my scarf with an ilarum. A phone was sandwiched between her ear and shoulder. I eavesdropped on her chats. Her words flowed like therapy pole. When I moved to London, I found a hairdresser in Woolwich, wondering if small mirrors can reflect a previous life. Wondering if small mirrors can reflect a previous life. I found a hairdresser in Woolwich when I moved to London. Her words flowed like therapy pole. I eavesdropped on her chats. A phone was sandwiched between her ear and shoulder. She drew a line through my scarf with an ilarum. Her eyes deftly measured it. Then she put a blob of blue magic on the back of her hand. People came in to buy bags, clothes, shoes, everything. She was a full-time scientist of time. She called, "Give me 5 minutes, please," when someone asked to jump the queue. After I mapped out the elaborate hairstyle I wanted, the hairdresser said to me, like shekere and tambourine, "What else is hair for, if not to shine, shine and shake?" This is the script of Lagos. The air was a carousel of oil sheen. When I entered the salon, the hairdresser asked, "Fine girl, do you want to do your hair?"
Thank you so much. I love hearing you perform your poems. I love reading them as well. And I wanted to ask about, you referenced sort of coming from poetry slams or that kind of performance side of things. And then how is it to publish your work in the sort of written form that you're then performing with music or not? And partly I'm thinking this because I was reading the book in my head and then found a sort of life hack as a new parent is that because baby can't really understand what you're reading anyway, rather than having to read baby stories, you can just read what you already want to read. So I've been reading sort of the stunning poetry to my child and hoping that it makes him a genius. But it was even for me, reading your poems out loud forced me to not rush through them or to kind of take them at the pace it feels that they were perhaps written. And I think I have always enjoyed watching poetry and experiencing poetry. And I feel like it's more recently that I've tried to enjoy reading poetry as well. But for you, how is it to write your words versus perform your words? Or how do you picture people taking it in?
I think some of my favorite poets exist in both worlds, so written and performance. So I came in not feeling like I had to choose either or the other, but it's just how can I play in those two spaces? So if it's the stage, what I love about performing is listening to the body and bringing in improvisation as well, because a poem is never the same twice. Because how you're feeling, tomorrow is going to be different to how you're feeling today, and allowing that to inform the performance. And your body becomes like an extra communicator. Outside the words, your body is also communicating something. So how can you use your body to do that? While on the page, I think form is something that I'm most interested in. And it's not necessarily about meter or anything. Sometimes it's just free verse, but how does the white space, what does that feed into the poem? And the way you arrange the words, the way you use form, rhythm, how is that going to inform the way readers are going to move through the words? So it's almost like you are a tour guide in some way. But regardless, whether it's on the stage or the page, for me, the poem has to have a voice. Voice is so important. And so voice is always the first thing I think about. And then it's, okay, what extra tool do I have for each one?
I love that in the book there are kind of these conversations in between the poems, for. It feels like the same way you think about each poem having a voice and being guided through it. It feels like the whole collection, you are on that journey as well. Was it written in a kind of linear way, start to finish, with that in mind? Or was it later that you thought about how to break things up or place things?
So the arrangement was actually the last thing. It was more, I knew the worlds that I was interested in. So it was naming, and I wanted to write about just like starting with the early naming ceremonies. I just wanted to write about culture. I knew I wanted to write about, decisions changing my surname, about love. So I had things that were kind of pulling me, and like, the building names, all of those things. So I had like things that I felt were urgent for me to write about. And when I finished it, I then read the collection, the poems I had. And sometimes you don't realize that the things or images that are occurring through the poems. And I noticed there was a lot of music and dancing, and it was probably because I was listening to a lot of music as I was writing it. So I noticed those things, and also seen what was missing as well. So it's like, what would I, as a reader, want to know more of?
Yeah.
And so, funny enough, the first poem in Ceremony of the Nameless was probably is the last poem I wrote, because I wrote everything and I realized that there was no introduction, there was no poem to set the tone. Everything was kind of like writing the action. That wasn't the kind of book I wanted to write. So, yeah, it's like you have the skeleton, and then you kind of figure out, okay, what world is this body of work what does it want to fit into?
Amazing. My something borrowed, I'll do in a minute, but it was from a naming ceremony I went to recently of my friends. And when I told another friend I was going to a naming ceremony, they said, "Oh, are your friends Nigerian?" Because that was the automatic.
Are they Nigerian? I was actually going to ask.
They're not, no. Oh. And so for them, they didn't want to do a baptism because they didn't feel comfortable in that church space, but wanted to celebrate their child and have some kind of sense of ritual around it. So it was songs where you would have hymns, it was readings and poems, and it was really thoughtful and beautiful. But it made me reflect on how religion is intertwined with ritual, and in these faith spaces there is a celebration around birth or marriage, or there is room for mourning and those kind of things. There was a Grace and Perry documentary a few years ago about how as society has become more secular, we have lost those places to mark those things. So I guess before I did this, I wanted to ask, like, what is specifically the Nigerian naming ceremony that you're referencing, but also how does culture play into that, and how does faith play into that, and what is the difference there?
Yeah, with Yoruba naming ceremonies, it's changed over time. I think you mentioned like people kind of lose in touch with their culture, so that's definitely affected the way the ceremonies are carried out. But it's usually 7 or 8 days after a child is born. You kind of announce, and I should say the cover of the book is actually my own naming ceremony with my grandfather in 1994 in Lagos. And so, yeah, the name of the child is announced, and it's usually family and friends around. And, there's joke of Nigerians have like 10 names, but it's because different family members, basically give a name based on what prophetically they think the child is going to become, or what they feel like God is telling them, or their hopes for the child. So there's different kind of names, or Anoriki, which is, it's not always a name, but a phrase that has been passed down through generations based on who your grandparents were, what kind of jobs they had, and things like that. So it's really a space to honor ancestry, a space for bonding, a space of praise. Like this idea of like it takes a village to raise a child, and really honoring that. It's such a significant thing for a newborn to be brought into this world. And I'll say the role that faith plays in it. So one, in the sense where the traditional way that ceremonies were done has changed. So before, it would be that you would bring a gift, and each gift symbolized something. So you would bring oil, and it meant that the child would have a smooth life, like lubricant. You bring water, which means that they will have no enemies, because no one doesn't like water. I think all of those things. But with the faith basis, you just bring a Bible, and this idea that that's going to be enough. But regardless of that, it's really just a space for people to be together. It's a generational charge. Yeah, that's the.
I love that. So this is a poem that was read out at this event, and it is called Do not ask your children to strive, by William. Do not ask your children to strive for extraordinary lives. Such striving may seem admirable, but it is the way of foolishness. Help them instead to find the wonder and the marvel of an ordinary life. Show them the joy of tasting tomatoes, apples, and pears. Show them how to cry when pets and people die. Show them the infinite pleasure in the touch of a hand, and make the ordinary come alive for them. The extraordinary will take care of itself.
Good choice. I picked Marseille by Luke Allen, and I read this poem before I went to Marseille. And for me, it's just the beauty of poetry, literature, film to transport you to another world or place that you haven't been to before, but how it changes the way you pay attention to things. So when I ended up going to Marseille, just what I was paying attention to and what I was looking out for was just different because of this poem. And it's just one of my favorites. It's Marseille. In Marseille, nothing is remembered, only dreamed. Does the willow dragging its fingers through the water know it is only a reflection? Does the man flipping onions in that little white truck know it is morning? Once more, it seems the world is leaking away, or not so much leaking as flooding, like a punctured submarine with outside. First, he lifts them with the holy spatula, then he tips them back over. Across Marseille, bin lorries are collecting the unwanted atoms and driving them out to sea. The lights on the bridge can't decide if it's morning. To fail to tell a person you love them is to take away something that belongs to them. I watch the sun come up and think of myself. The onions are getting thin as ghosts in their bed of oil.
Thank you so much. Before we finish on Something Blue, I'm just aware your book is very new, sort of out this week. How does that feel? How long has it been in the making? You mentioned that it's sort of changed a lot since you had that original manuscript. Like, at what point do you feel you get to celebrate it as a thing? Because I think poems are forever changing and the way we perform them change. And to put it on paper is to make it solid, but it kind of then continues to have a life. So are you able to take stock at those different moments? Because it is such a wonderful book and it is brilliant and it is here and that feels really exciting. Has it felt exciting to you, or has that been sort of spread across the journey together?
Gosh, you know, when you write a book, it's like, it's exciting, but you're also like stressed out because the book has lived with me for 4 years, just in my bedroom, on trains. Just, you mentioned like reading to your child. I've just done that to my nephew because he doesn't understand anything. But he did kind of beam me in baby language, I think. I don't know.
I got heckled a lot.
Yeah. I don't know if they understand what they're doing, but I'll still hurt. But but it's been 4 years, and I'm just so happy to now what's been mine to allow someone else to own the poems and to let go of it. So I was very much aware in that process that at some point this is no longer going to be solely my own. So, but I'm really excited because this is the whole point of writing, isn't it? It's for other people to find themselves in in our world, our thoughts or imagination. So I'm just really, really delighted, and I'm proud of the book, and I'm happy it's out in the world.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming. I'm going to do one more poem and then hand the stage over to you. So this is My Something Blue. This is from day 33, and it's simply called Hat Trick. When I put your hat on your head, you temporarily stop crying, and for a brief moment, I wonder if I have completed parenting. The next time you start crying, I immediately reach for the hat. But on this occasion, it does not have the same effect. Instead, you are now just crying while also wearing a hat. Which, to be fair to us both, is a strong look. On our morning walk, you seem to settle as I push you up the hill. So for the entire following week, whenever you appear unsettled, we do wheelies in the pram in an attempt to recreate the uphill experience. Now you are crying while wearing a hat, having also slid down to the bottom of the pram. There is nothing that I would not do to try and make things okay. And if what I have done coincides with you calming down in any way, despite no tangible evidence of cause or correlation, it will be repeated at least another 15 times until I confirm it was indeed a fluke. Whether that is blowing in your face or staring at a light, rotating you full circle, or suspending you mid-flight. And when you're screaming in your car seat with tears streaming from your eyes and your face is turning purple and I'm sat there by your side, I can't pick you up to hold you. And your mom can't quite pull off a wheelie in our Fiat Panda. And we've already tried putting on your hat. But I can give you my finger to grasp within your palm. And we can put on your playlist and sing into my arms. And it does make you calm. Or at least more often than anything else I do. And it does settle me even when it doesn't settle you. So I do think it's worth repeating at least another 15 times just to check that this isn't a fluke. Thank you so much. Would you share something blue with us?
Thank you for that beautiful poem. So this poem is, I always thought love poems the hardest to write. And somehow I ended up just writing a few in the collection. I'm not sure what happened there. But this is Measuring Light, and it's partly inspired by, the conversations with my husband about taking each other's surname, like what taking his surname and all that. Measuring Light. All that paperwork, legal uniformity. We swim in the pale pool of history. We joke that he could have taken mine. Either way, someone surrenders. I always liked the sound of his surname. Perhaps it was just instinctive. My husband and I have now reached for the physics of being to find a resolution we can rest in. We stand before each other. Our faces appear transfigured. We unveil each other in unison. By sharing one surname, we declare we have combined our individual lights. We call it concentrated radiance. A letter has come in, addressed to Mr. and Mrs. I smile, and light, so much of it, pours out of my body to the table, floor, even flows out from under the door. The pool is glistening. I see it. I know it. I feel it. We swim in it.
Thank you so much. I'm beaming from that. Thank you so much for all of your stunning poetry, your generous conversation, for being here. We appreciate you so much. Give it up one more time for Theresa Lola.
Something borrowed by Harry Bailey.